Tonight, Swamp Thing decides to overthrow a democratically elected government because he doesn't like the person in charge. That's topical. Batman Superman believes in the power of gamers to bring us to a happy ending. And Detective Comics decides to throw my entire weekend schedule out the window because they just had to have an anniversary issue. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 123 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I messed up. I mean, not in a major way, not in a way that you're even going to notice because I realized it before this episode started. But I went into this week thinking, okay, it's a light week. I've got 12 comics I need to read. I actually had plans because of Christmas. I got a gift that was non-delayable and non-changeable, and it was me going to New York for a single day. I was catching a Broadway show. And for those of you who are on the East Coast of America this January 8th, 2024, you'll know that there is a winter storm that just passed. And wouldn't you know it, I got caught up in that. So I thought, all right, it's an issue that I may be stuck in New York on Saturday into Sunday when I still need to film this show. But it's only 12 comics. It's only 12. That shouldn't be so bad, right? I forgot, and this is where I messed up, I forgot that Detective Comics was issue number 27. And because it's number 27, and Batman appeared in Detective Comics number 27, they did like a 100-page special. So I don't have 12 comics this week. I have like 16 comics this week because it's big enough to make up 4 comics on its own. So please forgive me if this is a little bit more rushed than usual. I'm trying for it not to be. In fact, the show may itself be very long, depending on how long I talk about Detective Comics, but just letting you know, it's been a weekend, and I'm doing my best, okay? Please. Thank you. Anyway, so let's talk about the comics coming out this week. This week, we have new issues of, as I said, Detective Comics, as well as Batwing, Action Comics, Batman/Superman, Green Lantern, Earth 2, Green Arrow, The Movement, StormWatch, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, and the event comic of Forever Evil, Arkham War. Additionally, I believe Phantom Stranger is part of the Forever Evil Blight storyline. And honestly, Batwing. Batwing is a tie-in to Gothtopia, which there is also a Gothtopia Part 1 in the Detective Comics. That's the other thing that I forgot to mention. Normally, with these oversized issues, I just take all the secondary stories and shove them on a 5th week. But because Gothtopia is the 6th story in, I gotta cover it. So it's just inconvenience the whole way around. But anyway, don't want to ramble too much. Let's go ahead and get into the comics, starting with, of course, Detective. Detective Comics number 27, written by literally everybody, art by everybody else. So, in reality, this is a combo 75th anniversary of Batman issue, and also the Detective Comics 27 being Batman's first appearance. They decided, hey, let's go all in. So there are 7 different stories. We're just going to march our way through all of them, but I am going to start with story number 6 as it appeared in the issue, because it's actually the first one as it appears in this trade, because it is part 1 of Gothtopia, written by John Layman, art by Jason Fabok. So we open up with Pamela Isley, supposedly not Poison Ivy yet, but she is definitely Poison Ivy. She's screaming about, oh, wake up, people, the world is being destroyed around us, none of you care, I'm going to make you care. She starts using her vines to bind up people. And we see, it's Gotham during the daytime, and everything's bright and shiny, and people are happy. And she keeps on yelling for people of Gotham to wake up, and Batman's like, she's clearly delusional, needs to be taken down, she's putting people in danger. So Batman swings in, but he's wearing a full white suit, and his Robin is Catwoman. But it's not Catwoman. In this, she's called Catbird. So Batman says, surrender peacefully, surrender now. And she says, like, no, I thought you would know better than anyone else, Batman, what the truth is. So he throws a few batarangs. She blocks him, throws him away with some vines, and says, you got it wrong, Batman. Let me show you. Goes in for a kiss. And that's where Catbird comes in, kicks her in the face, and says, yeah, not only is he my partner, but he's my quote-unquote partner, if you know what I'm saying. So she's about to go, like, full ham on Poison Ivy, claws out and everything, until Batman stops her, says, hey, that's enough. We stopped her. We're good. Enough. Don't go too far. And Catbird's like, oh, but she wanted to hurt us. And he's like, I know, but now she won't hurt anyone. And Gotham is once again the safest city on Earth. So they kiss, and we get a little montage of them going around doing things like saving babies from burning buildings and kids from school bus accidents and getting the key to the city. And we see there are also other members of the Bat family that have changed, such as Batgirl now being Bluebell and Batwoman being Bright Bat. And they're all getting medals of commendation from Mayor Cobblepot, and the chief of police is Black Mask. And he's literally still wearing the black mask. So everyone's just like, what's going on? But nobody seems to notice it. Until Harvey Bullock comes up and says, hey, there was an incident. We need your attention. And we see this guy standing on the ledge of a building saying, like, you know, threatening he's going to kill himself. And apparently this guy, like, he recently got engaged. He recently got a promotion. And he just won the lottery as well. So, like, why is he threatening to kill himself? And Batman goes up, he gets a grappling hook and saves the guy from killing himself. But as he's being walked to the back of a police car, he grabs one of the patrolman's guns and shoots himself in the head. And that's where we get the reveal that there have been a lot of suicides in Gotham recently. Like, I think they say specifically 15 times the national average and only getting higher. And Batman is not sure what's going on. And Catbird, Selina, just basically says, like, hey, I'm sure it's nothing. Don't worry about it. Like, take your mind off of things. And Alfred comes in saying, hey, yeah, Selina's right. Don't worry about it. Everything's cool. And he's like, yeah, I guess. Let me just go out and get some air. So he goes upstairs. And as he's walking around in the Garden of Wayne Manor, which is totally beautiful and awesome, his neck gets pricked with one of Poison Ivy's thorns that he didn't realize before. And all of a sudden, he sees the gravestones of his parents, and he gets really, really angry. So he starts beating up a tree in the garden. He's like, hey, Alfred, he goes back down, Alfred, I need you to analyze this thorn. Tell me what compound is on it. And he's like, right away, sir. So at that point, Batman flies into the city, and he is seeing things clearly now. He's seeing the real world, and he knows that it's not as it was before, as it wasn't all shiny and happy. And when Alfred comes back with the results, he was like, Alfred, if he was anything, should know that we've already run all of Poison Ivy's diagnostics. Like, we're not going to get anything new there. But I actually wanted him to analyze my blood that was on the thorn for any sense of, like, drugs or whatever. And there were a lot. Most of them scarecrow related and are, like, psycho hallucinogenics and whatnot. So as he's walking down the street, Catbird shows up just being like, hey, Batman, you seem a little bit weird. You're acting a bit crazy. You're saying that you're not in the right world. That's weird. And he's just like, look, Poison Ivy, she was telling the truth to something with Scarecrow, and she's like, well, your family's worried about you, Batman. And we see the entire Bat family all surrounding them. Catwoman goes for a punch, and he tries fighting back, but he's just like, okay, I've got, like, Flying Fox instead of Batwing, the Gothamite instead of Nightwing, the Wings of Truth instead of the Birds of Prey, all of which have tie-in issues, and they're all here to stop me. So I have no way of fighting my way out, but I'm going to try. So he does his best, but he does end up conceding the battle. He looks like he lost so that he may win the war. And we see he is transferred, still in the hallucinogenic state, to a mental health awareness-like place, and treating him is Dr. Crane, to which Batman's immediately like, okay, yeah, Scarecrow, I've already figured this one out. I think I know what's going on. And we see in the real world, he's being led into Arkham. Seemingly Catwoman is completely unaware, and the Arkham Asylum people are dosing him with something, making him see all this. So, yeah, solid issue. More story in the issue, I should say. Good setup to the beginning. I do think it's weird that we went ahead and just revealed what it is. Like, we're not even going to pretend like Batman's going to believe this for longer, but it is only a 3-part story. So overall, I'd say that one's probably like 7.5. Yeah, 7.5. So next up is the rest of the issue. First one is Case of the Chemical Syndicate, and that is Brad Meltzer writing and Brian Hitch on art. And it's basically apparently an alternate retelling of the very first Batman story. So Batman's hosting a gala. Jim Gordon gets tapped on the shoulder saying, hey, something's come up, he's got to go. But turns out Batman has bugged the police cars, and he finds out that there's a guy named Lambert who, he was a businessman, and his safe had been robbed. So Bruce goes down in the cave. He figures out that he was calling one of his business partners, Mr. Stephen Crane, 13 times and wasn't getting a response. So Batman goes to investigate Crane's place. Turns out Crane has already been killed by 2 guys who are breaking into his safe. And as they're going in after some papers, Batman comes in, punches him out, and looks at the papers and discovers, okay, turns out that, well, actually that's a reveal for later. So he says there's a problem, but we go to Ace Chemicals, and we see that the guy in charge of Ace Chemicals is being met with his other partner, because there are 4 partners in total for this syndicate, and they're like, hey, 2 of our fellow partners are dead, we gotta go, we gotta hide somewhere. And as they make their way down out of Ace Chemicals, the one that runs Ace Chemicals, named Albie, attacks the other one named Paulie, and just like, oh, I'm sorry it had to come to this, and he hits him over the head and puts him into a testing chamber for aerosolized gases or whatnot. And as he's about to close the door, Batman busts in, runs inside to try to save him, but Albie ends up closing the door and flooding it with the toxic gas. Meanwhile, this entire time, there's this narration going on where it's Batman basically saying, like, I do this because I have the means and the trauma, and I want to do it, and I'm the only one crazy enough to do it, and Gotham needs someone like me. And he just lists, like, all the reasons as to why he does it. So as he's trapped in this place, he gives his one breathing mask to Paulie and then tries breaking the glass on the tank. It doesn't end up breaking as he attacks it, and he almost gives up, and then he gets back up, tries again, breaks out of it, and uses a batarang to incapacitate Albie. So at that point, Gordon and whoever his lieutenant is at this point come in, and they see Albie and Batman, and they're like, okay, what's going on here? And Albie pulls out a gun, is about to shoot the cops, but Batman comes in, kicks him in the face, and wouldn't you know it, knocks him into a vat of chemicals, where he says his face is peeling. So at that point, Batman tries to grapple away with some smoke bombs. The lieutenant tries firing at Batman, but Paulie comes out being like, hey, he saved me, he's a hero, don't shoot at him. So Batman goes flying over the city, and the last thing he says is like, oh, I do all this because I'm Batman. First journal entry of the Batman. And then final little epilogue, we see a hand coming out of the vat of acid. It's good. It does feel a bit weird this being here, especially after we just got done the Scott Snyder 0 year thing, where kind of the same story happened. But overall, I mean, it's a good read. It's solid just independently on its own. I'll give that one a flat 7. Next up, we have Old School by Greg Hurwitz writing, Neil Adams on art, and it's essentially just Batman through the ages, and they do all the different styles. So, like, it opens up in 40s and 30s style, and we see some robbers running away with some money through an amusement park. Batman gets, people get away, but he catches their license plate on a bat belt camera. And then some guy comes up and says, hey, you broke my funhouse mirrors. And Robin's like, hey, we were trying to catch some criminals. And he's like, oh, okay, that's fine then. Thanks, guys. So they print out the image of the license plate, and they track down where the guys ended up. And as they knock him down, we see Penguin manages to get the drop on him. And he's like, Penguin, how did you know we'd be here? And he's like, because you guys are talking out loud. You're saying all your plans in speech bubbles. It's weird. So Penguin then says you need to evolve. And Robin says to stay relevant. And then Batman sheds off his old costume, getting a slightly more updated one. Now he's in like the 60s, 70s era. And we see Penguin is running away. He flies away using his cane. We get a fruit vendor that's passing out bananas. So he keeps on saying, na 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 na. And then he sees Batman, if you get that. So Penguin gets away in a rocket ship, and Batman uses his cape, which he just put some flame retardant chemicals on. so he's able to survive it. But turns out their suits melt once again, and he is once again a bit more updated. Mainly, it shows more muscle definition. So then at that point, Scarecrow shows up and attacks them. And there's like, wait a minute, Scarecrow, we weren't talking out loud anymore. We were thinking these things. How did you know what you're saying? It's like, because it's in your thought bubbles. I can see those too. Anyway, here's some fear gas. And Batman then transitions over into the 80s Frank Miller era, where he once again has to witness the death of his parents. And he even says, like, how many times am I going to have to go through this? Oh, God, it hurts so much. And so he sees a comic shop that he crawls his way to. All of his villains are waiting inside, and they're like, hey, Batman, we've been waiting for you. You have to carry all of these sins and fears and burdens because that is your immortal task. That is what you always must do. And he starts freaking out. And then all of a sudden, Batman wakes up, still in the comic shop, but it is a whole bunch of people celebrating the 75th anniversary of Batman. And they're like, hey, buddy, you cool? You fine? That's a great Batman suit. And he's like, yeah, I'm good. And the narration says, if only they knew what all I've been through. I'm not sure what the point of that story was, but I really like the art shifts and the fact that they're playing with the medium of like, I can see your thought bubbles, man. It's why are you saying all your stuff out loud? It's a nice little callback. I'll go ahead and give that one a flat 7 as well. Next up is the next one is called Better Days. They've just got a title card for the Mark of Zorro because Bruce was watching it. Better Days, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Ian Bertram. So Batman is really, really old. He's in fact 75, and he's walking down into the Batcave with a cane, and all of his old wards have shown up to give him a happy birthday. And of course, they're all old within their own right, but they are still out superheroing, whereas Bruce has hung up the cape for a while now. So he gets all of his wards to blow out the candles with him. They have a little bit of a celebration for a minute. We apparently are in like almost the Dark Knight like continuity. Barbara is commissioner, so everyone is happy. They're all hanging out, and then all of a sudden Bat's signal goes up, and Bruce says, well, what are you waiting for? There's trouble out there. So they all ride off on their motorcycles and cars until they all leave, and then Bruce just stares at them, puts Alfred to bed, and says, all right, I'm going out there. You can't stop me. So he goes out in the suit, and he's like, my body absolutely hates this. This is the worst, but God, I love it so much. And we see him going around town just beating the crap out of everyone he can. Super smart imagery here. It makes a huge bat symbol across multiple panels. Finally, he gets back home before everyone else arrives back. He gets redressed. Alfred woke up at some point. He's like, oh, that's weird. It seems like somebody snapped your cane against your leg. Anyway, here's a new one. He's like, yes, thank you, Alfred. So everyone else shows up, and they're like, hey, there were a record number of arrests tonight, and people were saying that Batman was the one who did it. You know anything about that, Bruce? He's like, what? No. And that's basically how it ends. Art's a little bit weird for me. It's not bad, but it is like strangely detailed in places. And there's one panel of Bruce just staring dead at the camera that will live in my nightmares forever. But overall, solid story. Once again, a 7 for that. This one's just like a 2-pager. We see Batman driving by a car accident. The car seemingly is on fire, so he screeches to a halt, goes over, sees a woman in the driver's seat, gets her out. She says, my son is in the back, so saves the boy. And as he pulls them both to safety, the mother says, thank you for saving him again. To which Batman's like, wait, hold on, what do you mean again? But all of a sudden the car explodes, so he shields them from the explosion. And then he runs off to go call for help. And that's when the kid is like, oh, was that the Batman? And the woman says, yes, Junior, God bless him. And I think this is James Gordon Jr. Also, by the way, this was called Rain. It's written in art by Francesco Francavilla. And I mean, it's solid, but like, it's honestly too short for me to give a rating to. If I had to, I'd put it at like a 6.5, but that's not saying it's a bad story. It's just too short to really judge it. Then we get The Sacrifice, written by Mike W. Barr, art by Gillum March. It's Phantom Stranger, the anniversary of Batman's parents' death. He's mourning them, and Phantom Stranger shows up and says, hey, Batman, would you like to know what your sacrifice truly meant? So we go back to the night in the alley, and we see, because Batman's able to alter things to some extent, young Bruce pushes the robber enough that the first shot does not kill Thomas. It just wounds his arm. So Thomas is able to punch out Joe Chill. And he's like, yeah, no, hey, great job, Bruce. You really fought quick there. And we're all still alive. We're a happy family still. Fast forward to modern day. And Bruce suddenly comes to. He is married to Natalia Trusevich, the Russian pianist or Ukrainian pianist, that they have a kid now, Thomas Wayne II, and he's just got a normal, happy life. But as he looks out over Gotham City, he sees that it is entrenched in a gang war. Some people wearing Scarecrow hoods, some people wearing Joker hoods. Thomas Wayne calls him in and says, like, hey, son, don't be out there. Lord knows Jim Gordon did everything he could right up until he was turned into a quadriplegic, and his daughter now has to care for him all the time. And then he turns on the news, and we see Ra's al Ghul has taken over a quarter of Europe, and Dick Grayson is currently on death row because he murdered Tony Zuko, who is an upstanding businessman, apparently. So Bruce sees all this. He hugs his kid and just like, hey, son, I think I'm in a Black Mercy story. I love you. I got to get out of here. So the Phantom Stranger meets up with him again. He's like, do you see now? It wasn't just your parents' sacrifice. It was yours as well. And he's like, okay, yeah. Thanks, I guess. And then we see, once again, he has to witness his parents dying in the alley as they set time right. So, I mean, I feel like Tom King did this story in the Rebirth run and nobody liked it. And now we're doing it again. But this time it's like a bit more condensed and artsy, so overall I'd really give the art like 7+, but all in all I think it's a 6.5 for me, just because stay out of the alley. It's not a good place to be. And the final story of Detective Comics is literally called 27, written by Scott Snyder, art by Sean Murphy. This is the big one. So we get the oath, we get him sitting there, yes father, I will become the Bat, and all of a sudden he shoots awake. And he sees a much older man in front of him who we discover is Bruce Wayne. And he sits up and he's like, whoa, what's happening? I was just in the study. He's like, yeah, sure you were. But like you weren't. You were here the whole time in the Batcave. And we see a wildly different Batcave surrounding them. And I'm going to call him New Bruce and Old Bruce. New Bruce is like, wait, what do you mean the cave? Like, I just came up with the idea for Batman, like just then. What do you mean what's happening? He's like, yeah, you think you did, but you didn't because Batman's existed long before you. And young Bruce is trying to get answers. Old Bruce just like flips him over his shoulder and shows like, yeah, you're untrained. You don't have enough to you right now, but like eventually you will get everything that I have. And he explains that the original Batman existed. He did his job. He did everything that he had to do. And he was Batman for a really, really long time. And then eventually the city came to a peace and he somewhat retired. But when it started getting bad again, he realized, okay, there needs to be a younger Batman coming in. So he made a machine. And this machine takes the memories of Batman right up to the oath and makes a new Batman clone. And he says, yep, there have been like 10 generations of Batman, and we get little glimpses of all of them as they all protect Gotham from these new threats that show up. And apparently it's now been like 200 years of Batman. And the old one says like, yep, so you wake up, you just made the oath, you just said that you will become the Bat. And from that point on, the original one figured that you got 27 years of time in you of being Batman. And if it appears that, Gotham needs Batman still at year 25, you boot up the machine, it starts building a clone for 2 years, and then you'll take over. It's been 2 years now, you've taken over, and I will soon die. And when that happens, you're going to burn this cave to the ground, and you're going to start your own, because you're going to have all your own heroes and villains and memorabilia that you won't need to do yourself. And Bruce looks up, and he sees a Joker card, and he's like, what about that one? Who's that one? And old Bruce is like, yeah, you'll meet that one. You always meet that one. So at that point, young Bruce is like, okay, but you said like, if I want to earlier on, I don't have to do this. I don't have to be the clone. And he's like, no, you don't have to. That's what you're given the choice. You can leave right now, but you better move quick if you're going to leave. And he looks around for a second, starts sprinting to a ladder out of the cave. But before he can make it out, he hears a crime report over the police radio saying that Gotham's being attacked by some weird lion man. And so Bruce turns back around, looks at the map of Gotham, and it's implied, never the end. That machine will come back. That is a big thing that people do not like in Scott Snyder's run. And it is set up here, and here's the thing, I don't mind it. I think that it's comic booky, and like, it's one of those things that Scott Snyder is like way too much thought into and is so sci-fi-ish, but like it lends to a bigger idea and a bigger like emotional punch. I think it's fine. Sean Murphy is on the art there. Fantastic the whole way through. It looks great. All in all, it's a solid story. I'm not going to fault it. Whatever it leads to in the future, that's for the future. This solid story, I think it's probably better that it's not Elseworlds, but it's the future. It's a future we're never going to reach because Bruce is always going to be Batman. Like, number one Bruce is always going to be Batman. So it's not like it even really matters. But all in all, I'd say it's a solid 8. I really enjoy the way the story is told. It's a good little, here's what the future of Batman is. It's nice. Forever Evil Arkham War number 4, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Scott, Eaton. So last issue, Bane realized, oh wait, if I'm going to be in charge of Gotham, I have to be Batman. So he made his own Batsuit, and the Arkhamites were still working on waking up their Talons. So this issue picks up with Bane getting the one Talon he has left, which of course ends up being William Cobb, who was like the main Talon that we followed throughout the initial Batman arc. And he's like, hey, William, wake up, need you. And he just like slaps him awake. And he's just like, oh, geez, hey, where am I? And starts fighting against Bane. And Bane's like, no, we're cool. Look, here's the thing. I'm Bane. Maybe you've heard of me. And he's like, yeah, Court of Owls mentioned you every once in a while. I was like, cool, great. Lot has changed since Court of Owls. The entire world has kind of gone to crap. Gotham is taken over by a bunch of crazies. However, I want to use you to take the city back from the crazies. I'm sure that you can understand how important it is to make Gotham right again. And he leads Cobb throughout the entire like facility they've got going on, and he explains everything about it. And he's just like, yeah, so basically, are you in or are you out? And Cobb's like, oh yeah, totally. Let's go free this city. So Batman and Talon, Batbane, however you want to call him, goes throughout Gotham, and we see a huge fight going on between Blackgate prisoners and Arkhamites. But here's one problem with the series that up till now hasn't been a big issue. There's a bunch of people who said like, oh yeah, I belong in Blackgate, like I am from Blackgate, but I consider them to be crazy. Like I consider them to be like the weird ones. I don't know. Like Firefly is an Arkhamite, but then there's a guy named Reaper who goes around in like a skull and crossbones outfit who's from Blackgate. So I don't know. But anyway, we see whole big things breaking out. Firefly ends up being like one of the big guys here that's focused on a little bit because of his powers. And Reaper, who's again this dude with just like a scythe for a hand, is like, haha, Firefly, I have you. And before he's able to kill Firefly, Sumo just stomps and crushes Reaper's bones. And he's like, got you, Reaper. There's too many people here. So at that point, Bane directs Talon. He's like, hey, go kill all the Arkhamites. Go take them out. And Talon just leaps into duty. He attacks Sumo. Then he uses Firefly's abilities to aim them at Sumo, taking both of them out. And he's like, all right, 2 down, an entire asylum to go. So meanwhile, somewhere else in the fight, we see like Zaz is going up against, honestly, I'm not sure which side Zaz is on, if I'm honest here. He's going up against, I think, Man-Bat. And we see Ventriloquist going up against, it's a dude with like light bulb powers. Barely any names are mentioned here. So, sorry, Zaz was actually in Arkham. Anyway, so Zaz starts like chopping off heads and stuff like that. He's killing a bunch of no-namers. He does actually kill, I think his name is like Cavalier or something like that, which I recognize because he was killed, I think, in a later Suicide Squad issue from like Rebirth. So that guy just can't catch a break. Anyway, Oh, Talon continues to fight through all that, and he's like, yep, the court knew that Arkham was a problem. They didn't want it to exist in the first place. I'm about to correct that mistake. And he just starts blasting his way through. We then see him about to kill Zsasz, and then Bane interrupts and says, no, 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 I got plans for this one. So then we cut over to somewhere across town where a kid is trying to run bread back to his mom who's injured, and he's interrupted by some dude who I guess is just like trying to bully him out of food. Bane comes down and just crushes the dude and like snaps his back over his knee. And him and the Talon say, hey, small little family unit, go to Bane Tower, not Wayne Tower, Bane Tower. You will be safe there. We're going to reconstruct Gotham from there. You'll be protected. So he hands them a gun in order to get there, and they make their way over. We then see what he was doing with Zsasz. He is essentially just torturing him, trying to get information as to where the Arkhamites are keeping the rest of the Talons at. And ultimately, they don't get any information immediately, but Zsasz is very close to breaking. But Talon makes the point of like, hey, question, what's your plan, dude? Like, okay, you get rid of all the Arkhamites, you take over Gotham, but then like the Court of Owls will come back, and what? You're going to lose your Talons. Like they're going to go back to the Court of Owls. And Bane's like, I'm going to give them their Talons. I'm going to give up Gotham to the Court of Owls when they come knocking, because that's fine. I'm cool with that. And Talon's like, okay, but then if you don't want Gotham, what do you want? And he's like, I want the world, bro. I'm going to give up Gotham to the Court of Owls in exchange for a small army of Talons that will answer purely to me. I'll venom the crap out of them, and I'll have an unbeatable force that can take over the rest of the world. So, yeah, that's my whole plan. And then we go back into where the Arkhamites are. They're down in a sewer, and we see them still working to wake up the Talons. There's a guy named Vortex there who is dressed like, he looks like a zebra. I think his thing is like gravity manipulation. Very vague memories. But regardless, Scarecrow's like, yes, Mr. Freeze, we're doing it. We're finally going to wake up these Talons, and once we have our small army, we'll aim them at Bane, and we'll take this city back. And we see the Talons all leaping up from their coffins out to attack Bane. So that's the issue. You remember like 2 issues ago, there was a whole focus on like, what's Gordon up to? And what about this warden of Blackgate and all that stuff going on? And I made the comment, it seemed like a bit too much. It seemed a bit unfocused. It seems like they got that message. Because there is nothing in this story to hint that we're ever going back to what Gordon and them were up to. I personally think it's a stripped down version now. I think it's much more focused. I'm able to keep track of where everyone's alliances are. The main focus is who gets control of the Talons is the one who wins. So, yeah, I'm interested. I'm down for it. We are over halfway done it now, especially because there's a little aftermath issue at the very end. But yeah, it's definitely got something going for it here. Especially with Bane being like faux Batman at this point. I'm at least having fun, I guess, is the thing that is going for it. Because the actual battle between Bane and the Arkhamites is like, who cares? It's just a bunch of no-names, and of course no big names are able to actually be killed, so there's not really any major stakes, but it's fun to see Bane, like, putting a plan into motion. That's kind of his whole thing. So overall, I'd say this is probably 7.5. It's a solid issue, not amazing, but I'm at least going to be checking out the next one of my own free will. Phantom Stranger number 15, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Fernando Blanco and Miguel Sepulveda. This is the next part of Forever Evil Blight, and I think last time was Justice League Dark, where a whole bunch of stuff happened. They were making a plan against Blight. They found Deadman inside of Sea King's body from the crime syndicate, and then it was revealed at the end that Phantom Stranger betrayed them all. So this issue picks up in New York, where we're looking at Chris's family, and they're all basically looking at like the rioting, looting going on outside. They're like, hey, we gotta go. Or at least the father's saying that, because the mother and the sister are like, no. We have to wait for Chris. Wherever he's been, we have to wait because we're a family, darn it. And the dad's like, okay, Look, we've looked for him. We have done our part. We have done everything we can. He'd want us to live. We gotta go. And at that point, wall behind them explodes, and in walks Chris, which is actually Blight now, and the deadly sins coming in behind him. And they're like, who are you? And he pulls back his mask and just be like, it's me, your son. And everyone's like, oh my God, Christopher, you're alive. But what's going on with the outfit? And he's like, oh, I am no longer Christopher. I am Blight. I can see your every sin. I will look into your soul, mother, and see all of your twisted urges and desires. And she starts freaking out. And the dad's like, what did you do? And he's like, all right, I'm getting tired of this. So he blasts them up against the wall and says, don't call me Chris anymore. I'm definitely Blight. So at this point, Phantom Stranger and Terrence 13 teleport in. And they're basically just like, all right, we're here in Chris's old neighborhood because we figure that he's going to show back up and try to see his family, and he's going to get rid of them in order to eliminate what little bit of Chris is left inside of Blight. And as soon as they get there, God shows up in his little terrier form, and time freezes for Phantom Stranger. And God basically is like, hey man, here's the thing. I need you to betray the Justice League Dark and join Blight. Don't fight against him. I need you on his side. And Phantom Stranger's like, I'm sorry, that's kind of the exact opposite of what I was planning on doing. Why in the hell should I listen to you? He's like, because I'm God and I've got plans you can't even imagine. And Phantom Stranger's just like, no, screw that. I care about that kid. I'm the one who brought him back to life. I'm going to go get him. Screw you, man. And God unfreezes time, and Terrence 13's like, I'm sorry, who are you saying something? He's like, no, just talking to this dog. So they go inside the building where Chris's family is still alive, but being tortured and such. And Blight's like, hey, Phantom Stranger, I thought I killed you. And he's like, yeah, we fooled you. Anyway. And he looks behind Blight and sees God again. He's like, all right, I guess I'm on your side now. I'm surrendering. And Terrence 13's like, I'm sorry, what? That was not what we discussed at all. And he's like, yeah, well, this is the way it's got to be. So he casts Terrence aside, and Blight's just going on saying haha, great, now you belong to me, just as much as Chris does. And I'm going to murder his entire family because screw them, they all suck. They all have those deep, dark urges inside of them. And as he's saying how he's going to kill his sister starts crying, and it seems like he peeps through just a little bit, and Phantom Stranger catches on to that and just be like, all right, I can't really go through with this right now. So as the Sins start attacking the sister, he blasts them all away with his magic powers. He gets Terrence 13 and the rest of the family out and says, all right, get everybody out of here. I'm going to go fight against Blight, and I'm going to save Chris from inside. So fight starts, and Blight the entire time is basically like, dude, you don't know what you're up against, man, but your soul, so much sin in there, the greatest sins of all time, I'm gonna enjoy using you. So at this point, we cut back to the House of Mystery, where Constantine, he's doing some sort of spell on the remaining consciousness that was inside of Sea King that got expelled when Deadman took control. And he's just trying to see what Sea King knew about the crime syndicate. He sees something that sends him into a state of pure shock and fear. And then he comes to talking to Swamp Thing, and he's like, Jesus, whatever this guy was feeling, he was terrified when he crossed over. That's insane. Anyway, let's go out and find the Justice League Dark. So they walk into the next room. We see Deadman inside of Sea King is still unconscious. And Nightmare Nurse is like, well, he's out of commission for a while. And Constantine's like, the hell he is. We need him. Let's go. But then we cut back over to Phantom Stranger and Blight. And Blight's got them all bound up. And he's just like, oh, man, Chris was born to be my, avatar, the guy that I am using as a host. That's the only thing he's good for. And Phantom Stranger says, I don't believe that. I never will. And as Blight is listing off all the horrible things in the world that Phantom Stranger had to endure, he sheds a single tear. And when the tear hits the ground, it shoots over to Blight and sets him on fire. And Blight's like, you forget that I walked with the greatest man of all time, Jesus H. Christ, and he showed me that there's no such thing as being irredeemable, or something like that. And then we just stop everything, and we go over to what I assume was the intercessional story that we got earlier on where Felix Faust, Nick Necro, and Ultraman are torturing Mind Warp. If you remember him from like the first issue of Justice League Dark, they're torturing him, trying to use him for like his magical abilities and whatnot. And there's some sort of project going on that they're trying to start the Age of Thaumaton or something like that. I don't know. They're making him a bioweapon. So they press a button to demonstrate it to Ultraman. Big laser beam goes off, shooting up into the sky. And then when they come to check on Mind Warp, he's just a skeleton. He is dead. So Ultraman's like, hey, the whole point of this weapon was to be rechargeable. Like, we didn't have to get numerous magical subjects. So figure out what you did wrong and fix it. So then we go back to Phantom Stranger. Chris is now back to Chris. Blight costume not on him anymore. And he picks him up and he's just like, I'm going to get you out of here, Chris. I swear I'll protect you. Blight is free of you now. And then Chris says, like, you don't understand, Phantom Stranger. Blight didn't choose me. I chose him. And then immediately he turns back into Blight again, throws Phantom Stranger, sends his sins after him to start beating him up, saying like, you suck. You're the worst, Stranger. I don't like anything about you. And I'm going to beat you up to prove it. And then all of a sudden, Phantom Stranger, beaten up, teleports out, back to the House of Mystery, and Nightmare Nurse starts healing him. So as he gets up, healed, basically Phantom Stranger's like, hey guys, I kind of messed up a little bit. I revealed that we're still alive, and also Chris is dead. Like, there's no way to save him. I'm over that now. Let's figure out what we got to do. And Constantine's like, well, I told you that from the first place. Like, all of this is so screwed up. I don't even know how you believe in like God anymore, because if God existed, we have every right to go and just punch him in the teeth. And Phantom Stranger's like, you know, that's a good idea. And so he opens up a portal in a mirror and says, all right, everybody, come on. And they're like, what? Where are we going? He's like, we're going to go punch God in the teeth. So everyone goes in after him. And we'll get there next issue. Gotta say, in terms of an ending cliffhanger, we're going to fight God. That's a pretty good cliffhanger. I'm interested to see, especially if he keeps his dog form, because that's a fight I absolutely need to see. So as for the rest of the issue, I've always felt the Phantom Stranger issues of this are just a little bit lacking, because Phantom Stranger is just out of the general vibe of all the other, like, Constantine's part of the Justice League Dark. Pandora, I mean, she's whatever. She's pretty much a blank slate at this point, but Phantom Stranger has his own lore and stuff going on, and it feels like each of his little issues for Blight is kind of just his own story. Like, we have to keep him away from the rest of the group enough for him to do his own thing. And then at the beginning and end of each issue, we just fold it back in. So, yeah, I'm going to say this is probably a 7. It's still good. It's still a good issue, but it does feel like it's kind of inconsequential to the larger arc as a whole. And I've gotten that feeling for all of the Phantom Stranger, like, tie-ins to Blight. So, yeah, 7's about as high as I can go with it. Batwing number 27, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Jason Masters and Scott Collins. So this is a tie-in, along with the next issue, to Gothtopia, which is going on over in Detective Comics. Long and short of the setup is Gotham City is a paradise now, and there's like no crime, but there are a lot of suicides. I wonder why that's happening. So we open up at the Gotham Modern Museum of Art, and it turns out that Batwing, in this alternate universe of Gothtopia, is called Flying Fox. And he's got an orange color scheme now. So he beat up some art thieves and just like, yeah, no, like they were heavy, but they weren't dangerous. They were just art thieves. And like Gotham is totally crime free. So like, why? I don't even really need to be Flying Fox that much. It's kind of a letdown. And as we see, Luke is just walking through Gotham. There's like these random rips in the panels, I guess, that show everything looking awful. And then we even see like some people jumping from buildings and such like that. And he just doesn't seem to even notice. But yeah, he's like, yeah, no, I don't really need to be Flying Fox anymore. So whatever. I guess things are going great. Hey, things are going great between me and my dad. And we get glimpse over to a football game where they're using Bruce Wayne's private seats. And he's just basically having a beer, watching the game with his dad. And he's just like, oh, yeah, no, I went to Rome in my last arc, and it was great. I made like a ton of money and stuff like that. And they was asking, oh, well, what happened? What about the girlfriend? What about Xena? And she's like, oh, yeah, she's depressed because her dad died, but I'm going to take her out and try to get her mind off of things. And he's like, yeah, I was kind of upset that you didn't follow in my footsteps, son, but now I see the real man you've grown into. I'm proud of you. So at that point, Luke's still walking through Gotham. By the way, there's a bunch of hot air balloons instead of the blimps, I guess there are supposed to be. Sure. So he gets accosted by a man who basically shakes him by the collar and is like, open your eyes, look around, everything sucks. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm wearing a polo shirt. Everything's great. But then he looks down at his phone and he's like, wait a minute, it's Wednesday. I thought it was Monday. Have I been walking around for 2 days? I've got tons of missed calls and stuff. Something's going on here. Flash sideways. We're now in the Gotham Underground, which seemingly has not been infected by this Gothopia thing. And we get the full rundown. It is Ratcatcher is being led by Russell. And if you remember Russell, he was a guy who basically went full-on Bane 2 issues ago in the Zero Year tie-in, who swore revenge on Batwing, / more specifically Luke Fox. And Ratcatcher explains, like, yeah, no, someone got all of Gotham high. We think it's Scarecrow. It's a whole Gothopia thing. Don't worry about it. What do you want to do? And he's like, oh, I've united the 4, drug trades of Anubis, the Corpse Corps, Speakerheads, and the Darklings, because we're going to make a boatload of money under my new guidance or whatever. And Ratcatcher's basically like, okay, here's my suggestion based off of what the rats have been telling me. Go up and to Gotham Overground, kill Scarecrow, stop the entire society is high off some drug thing, and then make a name for yourself in the meantime. And he's like, no, that's not the plan. That's not what we're doing. I've got too much on the underworld to deal with right now. And he specifically says, like, okay, I also want to get revenge on Luke Fox. So Ratcatcher says, well, all right, well, what can I do? And he's like, I know exactly what you can do. So over in the Bat Bunker, Luke is running some blood tests on himself because he realizes something's wrong, when all of a sudden he gets a call from his mom saying that something's going on with his dad at work. And we cut over to Wayne Tower, and he's waving around a gun in a boardroom, complaining at all these people for trying to, get ahead in their careers. But, sneakily, where he's like, oh, all of you are just trying to, throw each other under the bus. Oh, you want to be the new CEO? Well, if you want to be the next CEO, fine. Job position's opening up. And he puts the gun against his head, and at that exact moment, Flying Fox comes in through the window, stops him from pulling the trigger. And he's like, who are you? What are you doing? That suit is property of Wayne Tech. What's going on? And he's like, all right, I got to get my dad out of here. And he gasses him, flies him out the building. So he runs some tests on, again, himself and his dad. He sees that it's Scarecrow. It's some kind of fear toxin, but totally different. And he's like, all right, I've come up with a cure, but it's hard to make, so I can't make too much of it. So he injects himself. He immediately comes down because it's essentially a hallucinogenic. And he's like, wow, all right, that was awful. Also, why was I calling myself Flying Fox? That gives away my name. That was an awful choice. So then he injects his dad, and Dad's like, oh, hey, you're the new Batwing. And he's like, yeah, totally. Anyway, I'm going to get you home. Here's enough to inoculate your family. Go ahead and give them all the toxin and whatnot. He's like, okay, but how do you know how many people are in my family? And Batwing's like, Batman told me. He knows all about your family. And it's like, oh, okay. But what about my son? You didn't give me enough. You gave me one short. It's almost like you didn't count my son for some reason. And Luke's like, Batman says he doesn't live with you anymore, so I was going to give it to him directly. Speed is of the essence here. And he just basically tries to make all these, don't worry about it. Don't think about it too much. Look, we are really low on time here. Get home, inoculate your family. So he drops them off, and then turns out that their eldest daughter, I'm blanking on her name, Tam, she didn't come home. And no one knows where she is, but the youngest daughter, who again, cannot remember her name, basically is saying, I know where she is. I hacked into her social media accounts. I know where she is. So at that point, Luke and Lucius get the information. Turns out she had a secret boyfriend who's got an apartment downtown. So they drive up to the place. They go upstairs to the apartment, doors left wide open, so they creep their way in, and the dude is dead, and there has been a fight. And as we cut to what seems to be a very rundown-looking lab covered in rats, while the Farmer in the Dell is being sung of The Rat Takes the Cheese, we see Ratcatcher has kidnapped Tam and seemingly cured her of Scarecrow's toxin, but is holding her hostage with all of his rats. So, yeah, it's a scene. I like it. I'm kind of impartial on the whole Gothtopia event, mainly because it just feels like whatever, you know? It doesn't... The fact that we immediately get the answer. We immediately find out, like, it's Scarecrow. We know this isn't real. We're not going to pretend this isn't real. I both like that and hate that at the same time because, A, I feel like we've had enough Scarecrow. Like, especially in Detective Comics, and I think the Dark Knight one, like, we've had too much Scarecrow for, like, a while now. I think that saying, oh, he dosed all of Gotham, like, fine, whatever, do it if you have to, but I would have rathered something else. But no, the fact that it gets revealed so early on, I mean, I kind of like that just because we know it's not real. We know this isn't the status quo. We're not suddenly going to be like, oh yeah, Batman lives in the greatest city on Earth. It's like, no, it's Gotham. It sucks. So I'm happy we just got that out of the way. But it does make it for a weaker event where it's like none of the characters feel like they're even stuck in this world. They just immediately figure it out. And they're like, yeah, all right, fair enough. I guess I'm free now. So it might be a fine tie-in. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next issue is. But honestly, it feels like the whole Gothtopia thing's already over. And we're just moving into whatever the Russell plot is. So, yeah, we'll get there when we get there. But overall, it's probably like 7. Action Comics number 27, written by Greg Pak, art by Aaron Kuder, Mike Hawthorne, and R.B. Silva. So last issue we had a big monster was attacking Lana Lang, a dude named Ghost Soldier showed up, Superman seemingly threw the monster into the sun, but it turns out he brought it back to the fortress, and turns out it's actually like a kid, but like an alien kid. So we pick up in Clark's childhood. He's climbed up a big tree, 7 years old, and he's like, okay, I am going to fly. I just feel it in my bones. I want to try to fly because, like, I fell 50 feet off of a tree before. My head bounced off the ground, but, like, I'm cool. Like, I'm fine. So I'm gonna give it my all. But then all of a sudden his super hearing kicks in for the first time, and he's able to hear, like, everything for miles around, including his parents talking in the house nearby, saying, like, yeah, he's jumped from that tree a couple times now. He continues to be fine. Maybe we should tell him that he's not human. And Clark hears that and he's like, oh God, what am I? So he's obviously a bit morose for a few weeks. His parents notice and they say, okay, we got to tell him. So they get out the cape, the blanket that he was wrapped in. And he's like, okay, I get it now. I was still loved. I'm not like a freak or anything like that. And I understand now I have 2 sets of parents pretty much. So at that point, we cut back to what's going on now. I'm going to call him Baka because they call him Baka in like a few pages times because all he says is Baka. But he's just a kid with like alien looking skin and whatnot. So he's inside the Fortress of Solitude. He's resting on Superman's cape. He wakes up and he realizes he's like trapped inside a glass cylinder. And then Superman walks in and he's like, oh, he's awake. I need to say something like inspirational and like Superman and hey. So yeah, that's that. And Baka starts like scratching at the glass and he's like, hey, look, I'll get you out of there as soon as I can. I just need to make sure you're safe and all that. I need to make sure everything's cool. And then Baka has some sort of electricity powers that he's just able to short circuit the circuitry keeping him in and just lifts up the glass. And immediately he's just bolting around the entire Fortress of Solitude. And Superman's like, I know I could take him out in like a second if I wanted to, but like he's a kid. And Batman would be so pissed off at me if he saw me letting this potentially dangerous alien life form just bolting around the Fortress of Solitude. But you know, I'm anthropomorphizing him because I was once anthropomorphized, and it's what made me who I am. So Baka's going around, he sees some digital picture frames with like the Kents on it, but also Lana Lang, and he's just like, oh yeah, Lana, you met her before. Do you remember her? And the kid just like whines. And all of a sudden, Clark's phone goes off. Turns out it is Lana. And he's like, hey, what's up? And she's like, hey, you remember that hole that the giant monster made? Well, we went down into it and we found something. And Clark's like, hey, you're just an electrical engineer. You're not like an archaeologist. Maybe don't do that. And she's like, well, check your email. I sent you pictures of some stuff that's down there. I'm going to go down there because a bunch of suits have showed up and they're claiming like property over all of this site. So I've got to go down there and figure out what it is before we don't get a chance anymore. And Clark's like, wait, no, hold on. But she hangs up. She goes down and she's like pissed off that Clark was like, you're just an electrical engineer. And she's like, psh, I'm so much more than that. I can do this. And as she's going down into the hole again, we see that she's being followed by Ghost Soldier because they figure that wherever Lana goes, Superman won't be far behind. So as she makes her way down deeper, she hears a large crack in the cave wall, and then she sees light emanating from it. She's like, well, I probably should turn back and leave this up to Clark, but I gotta check it out. So she goes in, and she sees a giant ball of light just floating in the middle of this cavern. And it's got all this ancient, like, ruins behind it. And she's like, okay, this could change. Like, we came down here looking for energy. This could be like a free energy source because I have no idea what's keeping it afloat. So I'm just gonna like run some tests on it. But then all of a sudden, Lana gets attacked by a bunch of giant monsters, to which Superman immediately rushes in and starts fighting against. But Lana, not wanting to be showed up, she brought along like an electric stun gun. She shoots it at the first monster that comes and attacks her, but turns out it wasn't attacking her, it was Baka. And Baka just happily takes the electric shock as if it were a bath or something like that. And as soon as he says Baka out loud, Lana's like, wait a minute, the other monster said Baka. Did you not kill the monster, Clark? And she's like, Lana, I'm in my suit. Call me Superman. Jesus. And no, I didn't kill the monster because it was this little kid thing, see? And she's just like, all right, whatever. I don't trust it, but at least it's here. So it starts fighting against the monsters as well. Whole big thing's going on. And then when we get to towards the end of the fight, Baka starts to transform a little bit again. And he's like, oh, if he goes like kaiju sized again, we're screwed. He wouldn't be any better than these other monsters. To which Baka then says, oh no, they are worse. And then Superman and Lana are like, oh, okay, he can talk, like actual words. To which then Baka gets caught by a dude in like Viking gear. That's the best way I can describe it. And Baka starts growling and Superman's like, I'm not a fan of this. Put the boy down. And the guy's like, oh, it's not a boy, it's a monster. What the hell's wrong with you? So Superman and this guy are about to get in a fight. Superman realizes that he can take a punch or two. And then Baka turns back into his kaiju size again. So the whole cave starts coming down. Clark saves Lana as they crumble down into like a deeper underground cavern. And we see Baka was knocked out in the fall, and the Viking dude is putting chains onto Baka while speaking to him in some unknown language. And Clark's like, whoa, we'll take the chains off the kid. And it's like, dude, this ain't a kid. This is a monster. You don't know anything about our culture, okay? All that light from where you are, man of the sun, you're blinded by it. I and my monsters protect your stupid world from all of the threats that come from down here. And he shows them a big sweeping shot of the Imperial Subterranea, which is this huge underground city. And Clark and Lana both look up in shock, but then we get one more epilogue page of some queen, I guess, or some female leader who they're said, yes, all of Uker's beasts have been vanquished. So the guy in the Viking is probably named Uker, and they say, okay, we are free. Time to conquer Earth. So yeah, it's fine. It's a fine issue. I get that Baka, like in this whole thing of like, oh, what makes the difference between a monster and something like Superman? And the idea is that there is no real line of delineation. There's this spectrum of like, okay, how much can you personify it? Are good deeds done or are bad deeds done? It's going to be analyzing that. I'm fine with all that. That's good. My issue with it is the Lana aspect, because it kind of just feels like they wanted to use Lois, but like it didn't make sense for Lois to be here, so they instead went with Lana. I'm hoping they can justify it in future issues, but as it stands now, she's just kind of like, whatever. Other than that, I mean, I'm interested. I want to see what the Underground City thing does. Maybe they can play with the fact that Superman needs sunlight if he's down there for too long. I don't know. We got a lot we can do. But overall, I'd say this is probably 7.5. Good, not great, but still looking forward to what's coming up next. Batman Superman number 7, written by Greg Pak, art by Brett Booth. So last issue, all the gamers of the world are infected with some sort of who cares, and they're controlling a nanobot Batman and fighting against Superman, and it's all because of Mongol. So this issue picks up with a young woman, we don't get her name. She's waiting in line at the post office, and she needs to get this letter sent out by 5 p.m. today, because if it's not postmarked by then, she won't be able to get an application for something, and she'll lose her apartment, and if she loses her apartment, she'll lose custody of her kid, and her whole world hinges on this. Meanwhile, it's 4:57, and there's an old lady at the front who's like counting out pennies. So she's like, okay, I've got 3 minutes, I can make this. And the minutes tick by. We see Batman and Superman are in a fight going on around the city, and they just happen to crash through this post office, clearing out the entire line in front of this woman. And she's like, hey, I made it with 1 minute. And she goes up to the front of the office, and meanwhile, the dude who's behind the desk just runs away because obviously, and she's just like, no, but I had it. And she falls to her knees. She's so sad. And she sees that there was a man in line who dropped his AR glasses, I guess, and they're in the glasses, they're saying kill, kill, kill. And she's like, you know what, I'm so desperate, yeah, I could use this escape. So she puts on the glasses, and we see that she is one of the billions of people who is now in control of nanobot Batman. And Mongol and Agnes, who's the game developer who set it all together, are watching this fight go on, and Mongol's like, are you sure that even this Batman could beat Superman? Because, like, Batman's just a dude. And it's like, right, but the gaming system has this limited precognition thing, and since there are a trillion minds all working together in order to pick the best move for Batman, it's always going to be the best move, and it's going to be able to counteract anything Superman even could do. So... And also they say there's something about a golden fury blossom, which is some plant. Its pollen is what's making all these people ignore logic and reason and work off pure emotion, whatever. So we see this woman is one of the many people controlling, and it's like, right, but why would we want to fight Superman? And the woman explains, Superman may be the one that saves them, but he's also just too perfect, and he like flies above everybody else. It makes people remember just how like pathetic and pitiful they really are compared to Superman. So it's something cathartic about beating the crap out of him. And Mongol's like, all right, yeah, no, you basically covered all my bases there. I'm down. This is cool. So at that point, he goes off up into space to do whatever. Hero, who is the guy who originally made the game and didn't realize it was all just a front for Mongol, tackles Agnes because reasons, like it literally amounts to nothing, but he tackles her, and then Superman manages to pick him up, flies him out and says, hey, we have to go destroy that console, the one that's like powering the whole thing. And he points out, well, that's the only thing that theoretically is even keeping Batman alive right now. We can't just turn it off. And Superman's like, well, I think that's kind of what Batman would want, so let's go ahead and try anyway. So they go up to the satellites that are powering the whole thing, and Superman's like, all right, well, I guess I could smash this. So he tries to smash it. Mongol activates some shields, and Batman flies in, continues fighting, but he's able to control his own voice. And he's like, Superman, you got to stop. The entire atmosphere is being set on fire because of your attacks on the satellite. How? I don't know. It doesn't really get into it. But basically, Batman says, yeah, no, we need to destroy the console. You need to do that. And Superman's like, but that could kill you. And he's like, okay, but like, we gotta. So at that point, Superman says, no, there's always a choice. And he just lays back. He doesn't fight anymore. And all of the evil gamers deliver the killing blow punch to Superman, sending him down to the planet, seemingly defeated. Got the KO sign and all. So Hero comes out of a building. He's like, Superman, what were you thinking? He's like, I've been defeated, just like Batman. And he's like, yeah, no, you're in like rough shape. And he's like, right. But that means now I can be a player character, right? And Hero's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So now all the players are acting not only as Batman, but as Superman as well. And we see, what's her name? They say it at the very, very end. But the woman's just like, yeah, no, I'm going to go to hell, Superman, you suck. And Superman's like, please, I'm asking you. I promise I'll help you if you try to help me. So at that point, Robo-Batman comes back down and just like, yeah, no, we've got all these people. They're super hopped off on this stuff. Of course, they want to pick the strongest man alive. So, right, we're going to go for it. So they team up now. Superman and Batman go up against Mongol, and Mongol's just like, all right, you guys may think you're good, but I'm still Mongol. I'm going to be able to fight you off. And it seems like he's doing a pretty good job of it, but then it turns out that Superman and Batman were just leading him out of the city before the gamers put their plan into action. And I'm not kidding, they say gamers like probably a half dozen times here, all of them in that same sort of like, the gamers are too violent and stuff like that. But either way, they deliver a huge punch to Mongol, and then we just stop. And it says, and that was it. 12 hours later, everyone's back to normal. The golden fury blossoms burned themselves out, and everyone just moved on. And we see the woman is still like super upset. It's like, yeah, no, I lost everything. Despite saving the world and all that with Superman, I lost everything. And then Batman's like, or Batman wakes up and he's like, oh, I thought I was dead. I thought once we, took out that thing, it would be lights out for me. And Hero's there. He's like, yeah, no, we tore apart the console and managed to deactivate it without deactivating the nanobot regression system or whatever. So Batman's alive again. We see the young woman walking through the rubble of Metropolis, and Clark comes up and says, Lydia, that's her name, Lydia. The Wayne Foundation got your letter. You've been approved for this loan. You're not going to lose your home. And of course he has to pretend he's not Superman, but she's like, oh, thank you, Superman, so much, while looking up to the sky. So Batman meets up with Superman at the Fortress of Solitude. Superman just explains everything that happened to Batman. It's like, yep, the Fury Blossoms waned themselves out. We smashed the satellites, and we put Mongol in the Phantom Zone. And Batman's like, you sure he's going to be safe there? And Superman's like, no one's ever escaped the Phantom Zone. He's totally safe. So at that point, Batman says, look, it was stupid of you to put your trust in gamers. That's a line. That you put too much trust in people. That's why people are afraid of you. And Superman's like, dude, we won this one. Just take the win. Enjoy the victory. And Batman's like, all right, fine, whatever. But then his narration at the end says, people think I don't know a lot about gaming, but I do know this. Just when you think you've taken on the hardest fight, the real boss fight begins. And we get an ominous hand with a knife. Spooky. I've said this for the past 2 issues, and I'll say it again here. Jesus Christ. The fact that, gamers with a capital G. Ugh. It's so silly. This felt rushed. The fact that they punched Mongol once and then it's like, and that was it. It's like, really? That's all at one punch to Mongol? Okay, sure. When I say it's rushed, that's a bad thing because of writing, but it's a good thing because I am so sick of this horizontal layout thing they got going on here. I'm so happy that's done with. I never, ever want anyone to do that again. Please, stop it. So overall, I didn't really enjoy this issue, but I'll give it like a 5.5. It's just, the art's not great, the storyline is rushed, and frankly, it didn't feel like it knew what it wanted to do there at the end. Besides, gamers aren't all that bad. To which I say, that's not a moral, dude. Green Lantern number 27, written by Robert Venditti, art by Dale Eaglesham. So, last issue, frankly, doesn't matter because this issue isn't pretty much just a standalone start here. But I do believe last issue was the Green Lanterns making the arrest of all the different bradesmen from that one planet. So, this one picks up on Mogo, and we show that the building of the Green Lantern Corps complex and everything they need on Mogo is still ongoing. Sure, Mogo can go ahead and terraform himself and make a bunch of stuff, but we see Hal meeting up in the Citadel, specifically like the sick area, the sick bay, and Sornik is making a point of like, yeah, we can terraform a lot, but pillows ain't one of them. Like, we're still dealing with a bunch of stuff. And as they're in the infirmary, Saint Walker, the Blue Lantern, is there. He wakes up screaming out Relic, because that was the last thing he remembers. And Hal calms him down, just being like, hey, you're good. You're here. You're awake. We beat Relic. It's all good. Don't worry about it. And St. Walker's like, oh, okay. What happened to the Blue Lantern Corps? And he's like, ooh, they are all gone. They're dead. That's a thing that happened. And Hal's like, okay, but like, don't worry about it. It's not like they gave us the chance to fight against Relic, and it turns out that Relic was right, that there is a limited amount of the emotional spectrum and it's in like a reservoir or whatnot, but the Green Lanterns are now dedicated to protecting that reservoir, even if we have to use it to do so. So yeah, we need you back in action, okay? That's what we need. Also, by the way, Kyle Rayner's dead as well. And St. Walker's like, oh god, you just hit me too hard here. Look, blue is the strongest. It's the most powerful light. If there is a limited amount of blue energy or whatnot, it's going to go so much faster and it's going to deplete the entire spectrum if I use it. I can't. It's going to be the worst of them all. It's going to drain it so much faster. So I've lost all hope. All is not well. And his blue ring comes off his finger as he just falls back asleep. And Sornik's like, yeah, take care. We'll take care of him. You go do your other stuff. So Hal heads back out to the command center along with Kilowog and is just like, all right, look, St. Walker's off the table. The big wild card we need to deal with right now is Sinestro. Where is he and where is his core? We got to figure that out now. And Kilowog's like, okay, but they're kind of, if they're not doing anything right now, they're not a threat. We should be worried about the criminals that we released when we had to flee Oa. Like, those are our responsibility. And Hal makes the point of like, look, I'm not worried about Bolfunga the Conqueror as much as I am the Sinestro Corps. Those should be our priorities. So yeah, we got to go out there and we got to find them. At this point, though, the transport that's holding the bradesman that they arrested arrives on the planet, and it's like, all right, well, here's a chance to test out our new cells. There aren't science cells, it's literally just a cave, but we're going to go ahead and put them in there. And as they open up the doors to let this group of guys out, they immediately storm the guards. The Green Lanterns use their constructs to trap them, and it's just like, all right, well, that was stupid of you. Why do you think you're doing that? And he's just like, oh, we are free men, we will never be taken, blah blah blah. However, we see that the actual reason was so two of the bradesmen could get away, and they hide in the woods undetected. And it's like, all right, cool, we did it. Sorry, three of them actually. And they are waiting for a man named the Cook, or his job description is cook. He's a cook here on Mogo, and he's like, yep, I blend in. I know all of the Green Lantern secrets. I'm here to help you. And he undoes their handcuffs, and he gives them some weapons that were taken directly from the arsenal so that they are able to actually do damage against Green Lanterns. So at that point, he's like, all right, look, I got an entrance in. Barely anybody uses this area. We're just going to go in and we're going to sneak our way into the central command area. And the moment they open the door, they realize, oh, wait, since he last came in here, it's been used for the infirmary. So they immediately start firing on all these Green Lanterns in there. It goes through their constructs, and Sornik immediately just puts a stop to it, say, hey, this is an infirmary. There are sick people here. We surrender. Don't do anything more. Just go. We won't fight you. You don't fight us. And one of the Green Lanterns is like, excuse me? Huh? What? But Sornik pulls rank and says, that's the way we're doing it. So they start running down the hall, and the one Green Lantern's like, hey, chef guy, don't think I don't recognize you. I'm gonna come after you after all this. So they make their way down to a central command area where Hal currently is. Hal gets a call from Sornik saying, sound the alarm. They're coming in. You got to stop them. But then he's knocked out by the bradesman, and he gets kicked in the face, knocked unconscious. So at this point, the cook says, all right, now it's time to put my plan into fruition. And they open up a briefcase with some weird yellow looking bricks, and I think it might be money or it's like components to do this thing. But regardless, we see that the cook is actually a Durlin. And for those of you who don't know, Durlins are shapeshifters. They've been hinted at for several months in this issue. But he transforms into Hal Jordan. He gets up onto the basically the comm center, but it is able to send out a link to the entire universe. So he pulls up, all right, all channels open, send this message out to the entirety of the universe. It's under Green Lantern control. All the sectors are brought up, and he gets up there and says, hey, everyone, my name's Hal Jordan. You can verify that. I'm definitely him. Totally Hal Jordan. Here's the thing. Green Lanterns are going to be authoritarian now. Anybody who is using the light that is not a Green Lantern, we will absolutely crush and destroy. Anybody who has a problem with the Green Lanterns doing this, we will absolutely crush and destroy. And that's just how it is now. You don't like it? Suck it up. Because you can just ask the citizens of Deccan, and that's the Bradesmen, and they show footage of this entire Green Lantern Corps coming to arrest like 12 people. So at this point, we cut around to Simon Baz, Guy Gardner, the rest of the Green Lantern Corps, and the Star Sapphires all saying like, what the hell is he doing? So at that point it says, all right, anybody who stands in our way, you will be crushed. It's a new era. Green Lanterns out. And he hangs up the call. So at that point, Hal wakes up and he uses his construct to keep the Bradesmen in one place, but meanwhile the Durlin has already disappeared somewhere else. So the Bradesmen see on the comms a bunch of calls coming in from Green Lanterns all over the universe that they're being attacked, that they are under siege, and the Bradesmen basically pull a suicide bombing. They blow themselves up and say the revolution begins. So Hal's blown away. He is still alive though. Kilowog comes up and he's like, hey, Hal, you okay? And Hal's like, yep. And he's like, cool. What in the hell are you doing, man? What was that message? And he's like, no, it was a shapeshifter or something. It wasn't me. But like, they just made it so the whole universe and the Corps are now at war with each other. So we see all those people calling in for help. We see their outposts are just being destroyed by a bunch of ships and then just static. So yeah, it's something. So I like it. I really do. I like first off, they've been setting up this Durlin thing for like months now. And the fact it pays off here, I like that. I think it's a solid, because it could have easily just been like, oh no, I've infiltrated the Corps and like we can go on for like 7 arcs without them actually doing anything. But no, it's like, here is step 1. And it makes sense that there would be more steps after this because it is basically just a non-reveal. Like nobody except for Hal knows for certain that there is a shapeshifter among them, and he knows nothing about them either. So down for the setup. As for the actual storyline, they've been hinting at this. They've been hinting at this idea of like the Green Lantern Corps is not trusted to run the universe post Relic and Lights Out and all that, because what they were doing was actively harming the universe. So that makes sense. I think this is a good story beat. I think it's moving forward in a good direction. Overall, I'd probably give it an 8, but the only reason why I'm not giving it an 8.5 is because it does still feel like the front half of it is kind of just like, okay, well, here's where we are now. Here's a general like vibe of things going on, to the point where they're literally recapping the past arc to Saint Walker. Like, it just felt a little bit, for all you new readers, here's where we're at. So half a point off for that. But the back half of it, solid setup for a good future arc. I'm looking to see how it goes out from there. Earth 2, number 19, written by Tom Taylor, art by Nicola, Scot, and Robson Rocha. So last issue we had our new Batman coming down to rescue Aquawoman, despite the fact she hates being called that, and some sort of super intelligent Jimmy Olsen, and also meets up with Lois Lane, who is now Red Tornado. Also, evil Superman just destroyed like everything. So we open up with evil Superman flying the Mr. Terrific, Terry Sloan Mr. Terrific, and Flash away from the base that he just destroyed. And everyone's looking on like, Where's he going? Is he done? Are we safe? Is everything cool? Dr. Fate's mumbling some crazy stuff of crumbles angel in the slaughter green. And it's like, okay, well, we need to get him to a hospital because he's just nuts right now. But as they look up, they see the sun suddenly become blotting out by a bunch of parademons led by one of the people from the previous, like not Bedlam, but one of the other ones. So Batman, leading his little crew underground, is just like, all right, I've got an airlift waiting, but I need to get outside. And Major Soda's like, I don't even know who you are. Why should I follow you? And he's like, I don't care if you follow me. I'm talking to the other people. You can do whatever. You can stay here for all I care. So at that point, Jimmy Olsen chimes up saying like, hey, look, here's the thing. They locked me away in here for a reason. It's because I hacked in here and discovered that there was an alien down here and we need to like get him out. So Major Soda says like, I don't know what in the hell he's talking about. He's like, no, of course you wouldn't. You're barely worth your salt here. No, there's a dude. He's down in a sub-basement. Maybe he's a Martian. We got to go check him out. And Lois, as Red Tornado, sees like, yep, I see two people beneath us in a subfloor, despite the fact we're theoretically on the lowest layer. So Aquaman busts through the floor and just immediately jumps down. The two guards inside are sitting on a giant-ass laser beam, and it's just like, who the hell are you? It doesn't matter, fire! And they blast her with it. She comes out unscathed, and she says, I am Morella, Queen of Atlantis. How dare you? I can take every molecule of water out of your body without a thought, so sit your asses down. And at that point, the rest of the crew comes down, and they say, like, all right, so clearly they're guarding this giant door. Let's go ahead and bust it open and see what's in there. And immediately Major Soda's like, well, hold on. Okay, I do know what's in there. You're going to scare him if you bust down the door. Let me just open it for you. And she pushes her key card against it, and it opens up, and inside is like a suburban-looking house and some dude who just says, hi. So back in Washington, Superman lands with his two Terrifics and a Flash, and a bunch of people have gathered with cameras and such, and he's like, you know what I remember about the world before I joined Darkseid's ranks? It's how important your symbols are to you. And he looks at the Washington Monument, and he says, let's get a symbol of our own. And he grabs it, he lifts it off its base, and he destroys the White House with it. So at that point, we cut back over to our group, which, for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the dude with the arrows, and they literally never say it again, but he's trying to blast down as many parademons as he can, and as he is still listening to Dr. Fate's ramblings, he repeats one of them, Angel in the Slaughter. So we then go back down to the kid in the vault, and he is named Val, and Val's like, hey, Soda, what's going on here? He's like, oh, everything's cool. These are just some visitors. And he's like, oh, great. I made some tea. Do you like some chamomile? And everyone's like, kid, why are you locked down? Who locked you up down here? And he's like, oh, I'm down here of my own choice. Like, I'm free to go whenever I want, but I don't want to go. It's just like, I'm sorry, but like, why? And just like, I don't know. I just... seems right. And then he starts feeling sweaty and he passes out, and Batman comes over to look at him, and he winces in pain. He's like, you're hurting. You hurt me. And Batman's like, wait a minute, hold the phone. And he reaches into his pocket, pulls out a thing of kryptonite, and says, this kid's a Kryptonian. So back in Washington, Superman gives his message to the people. He's like, hey guys, so Apocalypse is dying. Darkseid needs a new planet. And you have been chosen as the new planet of Darkseid. So we're just going to do some light terraforming to turn this place apocalypse ready. And we'll thank you to stay out of our way. Also, we'll kill you. So at that point, we see Bedlam is talking to the two Terrifics. And it's just like, okay, but like, why are we even here? Like, our heroes and armies have been broken. Why have you not just done the thing already? And Bedlam's like, oh, Darkseid's not coming until like everything is in place here, and I need your two big brains in order to help this go as much as possible, because remember, I got mind control powers, so I have to break you down enough that you will obey me, but not break you down so much that you lose your will to come up with cool things. So we're just going to work on that middle ground now. And he starts working on Terry Sloan, and he's like, oh, Terry, you're already a monster. That's great. So our crew from the vault is carrying Val upstairs, trying to get through all this wreckage that's been formed, and they hear some noises right behind another door, and Batman's like, hold on, Jimmy Olsen has photographic memory. We can't let him see what's on the other side of that door because he is still a kid. So they put a blindfold on him, and Jimmy's like, what? Is it just fighting? I've seen fighting before. And he's like, no. It's a massacre. And as we open up the door, we see the entire world army's just dead by the hands of parademons. Lois is told, all right, take Jimmy Olsen and Val and get them out of here. Just fly them away. And here's some coordinates to go to. And she's like, oh, I know these. These are the Batcave. And he's like, how in the hell do you know where the Batcave is? All right, whatever, go. So at that point, Batman was talking about arranging his own airlift. Turns out it's Hawkgirl. Hawkgirl swings in, grabs Batman, Aquawoman, and Major Soto, and flies them out of there. And we get a one-page epilogue of someone talking, basically saying like, yep, Earth has fallen. Superman is taking it over for Darkseid. Millions died in an instant, but there's something that can't stay dead. Something green. And we see a green ball of light. I guess implying that Green Lantern's still alive, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I liked it. I thought it was good. Next up after this is the annual where we get Batman's origin story. But as for this specific arc, I mean, it's taken swings. That's the thing. When you're not working in the Earth Zero framework, when you're on a different Earth and no other writers are really touching that, you can do whatever you want. And I like this fact that they're like, no, we're going to take big swings. We're going to theoretically like kill off characters and we're going to make stuff matter. I like how we're setting up the alternate Superman here. I believe it's Val Zod is his name, but I could be wrong in that. Regardless, it's solid setup for the future arc. I'm looking forward to seeing how we fight against evil Superman. It's definitely going to have its ups and downs, I'm sure, but overall, I'd say this one is probably a solid 8. I really do enjoy it, and I think it's an interesting book for now. I'm worried because we are very quickly coming up on the weeklies, which is Earth 2 World's End, and I've not heard good things about that, but we'll see what happens when we get there. Green Arrow number 27, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Andrea Sorrentino. So last issue, we went back to the island, and we got a little bit of Oliver's origin story about how he took up archery when he was a kid and then had to relearn it and blah, blah, blah. But the big thing that we ended with was the leader of the Outsiders is sending the Shield clan to go attack Oliver and Shadow because they have found the resting place of the Arrow totem. So we pick up on the island years ago when Oliver was captured by some people who were paramilitary there. And as they wake him up, they're like, all right, who are you? Who are you working for? Why are you here? And he's just like, I'm Oliver Queen. I was stranded here. I don't know nothing about nobody. And we see this masked man come in and he's like, you're lying. Tell us your name, your real name. And he's like, I'm Oliver Queen. I'm serious. That's all I got. I got money. You want money? I can give you money. He's just like, all right, well, let's do it the hard way. And they start like torturing him and waterboarding him and trying to get the info out of him. So we cut to now, and as we're at the tomb of the Arrow clan, they go up to where the arrow should be, and it ain't there. And Shadow's like, seriously? Like, you still don't get it? You still don't understand what's going on? And he's like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, do you honestly think that it's coincidence that you and your father, you were stranded on this island that your father went to before? Like, this is all just happenstance? You seriously think that? And he's just like, if you got something to tell me, just say it already. I'm sick of the games and everything like that. And she's like, you already know it. You know it. You just don't accept it. And he's just like, all right, enough. But then they hear some pounding and some rhythmic chanting outside. And they're like, all right, well, something's going on. Let's check that out. And as they go back up, they find the Shield clan has arrived with its leader, Kodiak, and trouble for Oliver. But then we cut over to Japantown, San Francisco. And for anybody who's been listening for the past 10 months of me talk about what's going on in Katana that just ended, this is so much better than any of that. So we see Katana's like meditating, and Magus shows up and says, hey, Tatsu, I've come to, and then immediately she's got a sword at his throat, and he's be like, I prefer you tell me who the hell you are before you start giving me offers and stuff like that. And she's like, that's a cool sword you got there. It's, a bit of a Sword Clan thing. You know about the Sword Clan? You know about all that other stuff going on? Mona Shard, Coil, a bunch of stuff that happened in your comic. It's all connected to this thing called the Outsiders. Does that sound familiar? And Katana's like, vaguely, I feel like we use that word once or twice in my book. And it's like, cool. I can answer every question you have if you come with me, but be forewarned, it's a bloody trail ahead. And Katana's like, I'm down. That's kind of my whole thing. So Shadow and Oliver immediately start firing their arrows at the Shield Clan. It's a beautiful sequence here. Just paneling is amazing. And of course, the Shields stop it because they're just arrows. And so Oliver's like, okay, normal arrows didn't work. Now you get to see why trick arrows are important. And he does like a flip over top of them and manages to fire a arrow at one of them. It gets lodged in their shield, but turns out it's an explosive arrow. So immediately big explosion. And Shadow's like, I will never make fun of your trick arrows again. So he starts going through the whole gambit. He got like fire spewing arrows. He got net arrows. And he just starts taking out the Shield Clan one by one. And seems like they won, but unfortunately, there's still Kodiak to deal with. And he jumps off a cliff and lands right next to him. And he's just like, man, I had a whole thing going on with some Danish twins that I got pulled away from this. And you guys are just so weak. You're not even worth my time. So Oliver tries firing off a few arrows saying like, Jesus Christ, you clan heads talk so much. And he's like, yeah, well, you know how it is. So at that point, they realize, all right, well, we need to run. So they just start bolting away from Kodiak, who's yelling after him. He's just like, get back here. Don't waste my time like this. You know you're already dead. And Oliver's like, don't worry. I have a place where we can regroup. So we cut back to years ago, and he's still being tortured by a guy. And he's like, look, we've been at this for weeks. Tell us what we want to know. Tell us who you really are. We're not going to let you die, even though that's all you want right now. We can keep you alive forever if we have to. Like, we're going to get our info. And he pulls out a pair of pliers and he asks the question, like, who sent you? And he starts like pulling at one of Oliver's teeth. But then Oliver's like, you know what? Up until this point, I was the little rich boy, even still, even after all the stuff I went through. But I had to kill that version of myself to survive here. And he headbutts the guard, manages to break free from the chair. We see that he gets a wooden shard out of the chair, and the guard's like, well, now hold on now. You're not a killer. You're just a kid. And Oliver just gets on top of him and stabs him repeatedly in the face. So the guard is dead. And just like that, the Oliver Queen from before dies with him. So he grabs a jacket and he immediately bolts from the base. And the rest of the guards see him and they say, oh, kill him, he's free. And we see him running through the woods. And then it cuts back to current day where Oliver and Shadow are approaching the same base where he was before. And Oliver's like, well, this is it. This is where I was kept for weeks. And Shadow's like, I know. Seriously, do you not get this? Do you not understand it yet? And he's just like, what do you mean I'm supposed to get something? Jesus, what's going on? And she says, like, look, none of this was an accident. Absolutely none of it. Every single aspect of this was planned. The fact that you rode up on this island, the fact that you had to use archery in order to survive, the fact that you were captured for a few weeks and you were being not tortured, but tested and trained. Come on, man, put it together. And he's like, no, I refuse to accept it. And stepping up behind Shadow is the same masked man as before, saying, hey, I'm sorry, Oliver, I didn't have a choice. I had to bring you here to keep you safe from LaCroix and prepare you for war. That's right, it is me, son. And he takes off his mask, and it's Oliver's dad. He survived. He's alive. Somehow, Oliver's dad has survived. Solid. I mean, what am I even supposed to say? The paneling in this is great. The pacing of it's fantastic. The backstory, origin story, the current story going on, the villains in terms of the Shield Clan, all of it, fantastic. I love every single panel of this. The only thing that I would give any critique for is that Oliver's a bit too thick-skulled. Like, I think all of the readers kind of put together like 3 issues ago of like, no, he didn't wash up on that island by accident. That's too coincidental. But Oliver, for some reason, just needed it extra spelled out for him. But beyond that, I can't fault any of this. I think it is a I'm going to give it a 9. And the only reason I'm not going higher is that I think that it still has greater heights it can reach. I think that there is something more to this that we're building to, and when it hits it, that's when it's going to deserve the 10. But as it stands now, it's still absolutely fantastic. StormWatch number 27, written by Jim Starlin, art by Yvel Guichet and Raymund Bermudez. So last issue, the Collective had made the decree that they're going to go back in time and destroy humanity before it ever started, because they can just do that. And then StormWatch is ready to make a deal with Extremax. So we open up with Apollo getting supercharged outside of a nearby star, because I guess he's never gone into space before, and he's like, wow, this feels so much better than charging up in the atmosphere. And AI's like, I know, right? Total energy, like, absorption. You're good forever now. Not actually, but he is good for a while. And then we immediately cut into, if you remember, there was like 3 pages over the course of the past like 6 issues where there's a security guard who was like stealing secrets and acting all shady. Well, they just caught him. It doesn't show when, it doesn't show how, but they caught him. And they basically say, cool, so we caught you on videotape and you were stealing secrets. What do you have to say for yourself? And he's like, I want a lawyer. And it's like, cool, we're not America. I don't know where you think you are. We're in space. Like, we can just do whatever we want to you. And so they pull in Jenny Soule. And she immediately reads the guy's mind. It was just like, oh, he's stealing secrets for John Jones, the Martian Manhunter. And immediately everyone's like, okay, so that's probably like the JLA is doing something. So what was the last thing they were trying to steal? And they found the flash drive, and there was apparently some decryptor, which means they've stolen other secrets, but they're all encrypted, so they can't actually read any of it. So Storm Control puts out there, says, all right, you guys, you're going to have to go do your own thing. We'll deal with the Martian Manhunter thing going on. We're going to have to eliminate the secrets that he's stolen, even if he can't decrypt them. And everyone's like, all right, but what about dude stealing secrets? It's like, oh, he's fired. And they zap him with a memory gun that erases his past year, and then they're just going to drop him down on Earth. So at this point, we see Jenny Soule, Apollo, Hellstrike, and AI are all going on the Extremax mission. And Midnighter and Weird are like, I don't like being held back, but for some reason they are. So they go through the new guy. His name is X. It's short for Zeomar. He makes a portal. They go through it, and it's like, cool. So we're pretty sure that Extremax doesn't know how to track these portals because it doesn't use Stormwatch tech. And then immediately, the mid-level bad guy from before, Mordak, he's just standing there, and he's like, no, we can track him, and we've already set up extra security measures, so I'm here to destroy you now. And he grabs Apollo and just like, oh, I almost beat you last time, man. I'm going to grind your face into the dirt. And he's like, oh, I was depowered last time. Let's try it again. And so Apollo just immediately one-shots him, says, show us your boss. And Extremax just shows up being like, hi, I'm here. What's going on? So AI explains, we want to set up a alliance against the Collective with you. And he's like, yeah, I turned you down before. What changes it this time? And he points out Jenny Soule and says, that little girl killed 3 of the Collective, something that you have never been able to do. And he's like, all right, I'm listening. So then we cut over to Storm Control again, who's talking to Forecaster. And it's basically saying, all right, if we need to get down into JLA headquarters, which is essentially just Argus, the only way to do it is to try to appear as Martian Manhunter. So the Forecaster somehow makes as far as I can tell, a costume that is just appearing to be Martian Manhunter, but it can also do things like his retina and handprint, which is apparently all they need to get past security until they get to a point of a DNA scanner, which Storm Control is the one who's getting into costume. He says, yes, the Shadow Lords gave me all the files on the previous Stormwatch before Jim Starlin reset the whole thing. And Martian Manhunter was in that. And also I learned a lot of details about my own self that I didn't know. So maybe he has some level of DNA control. I don't know. Regardless, he has X show up and says, hey, make me a portal. I'm going down into Argus. And he looks exactly like John Jones. So back with Extremax. He's like, yeah, no, she's got crazy telepath and telekinetic abilities. Go ahead, check her out. And Extreme Max teleports her like 5 feet closer to him and then starts probing. And she's like, oh, hey, you're a telepath too. He's like, yeah, but nowhere near as powerful as you. Do you have any idea how powerful you are? And she's like, no, not really, but I'm guessing I'm pretty strong if you're impressed. So at that point, we see him still saying, okay, but like, why do you, like, how do you see this alliance going? And he's just like, well, you and Jenny Soule work together, figure that out. We'll leave the details up to you. But in order to show good faith, here's the second part of the MacGuffin out of the 3 parts where the collective has the third. We're giving this to you just as a gift. And the whole reason we stole it before was just so we could talk. So I hope we're cool now. And Extreme Max is like, okay. So at that point, Hellstrike and Apollo start talking in the background and just like, hey, are we cool with him having the whole MacGuffin? That seems like a really bad idea. And they're like, yeah, but we'll just like kick that down the road a little bit. We'll worry about defeating him later. And then Extreme X looks over at them and they look up at him and it's just like, hi. So then we go down to Argus where the not Martian Manhunter has arrived and, he walks by some guards. No one's paying him any sort of attention because he's supposed to be there. He makes his way over to a door and he has to use the palm scanner, so he gets in. But as he enters, he's greeted by Hawkman, who says, Martian Manhunter, what are you doing here? And that's all we get in this issue. So then we go over to Extreme Max, who gets a little... He explains what the plan is, that if they want to destroy the collective once and for all, he has intelligence that says there's something called the Soule Mind, S-O-L-E, mind, and all the collective, like, hook up with that, and that's what gives them their psychic and temporal time-traveling powers. So if they can destroy that, then it's cool. Everything's great. So they keep it guarded and they're figuring out what to do. But then immediately Extreme Max is like, oh, hold the phone. My sensors are picking up that the collective is traveling back in time and they're messing with Earth's history. Hey, Jenny Soule, we got to go deal with this. And then they just teleport out back in time. So Apollo, AI, and Hellstrike are all standing there like, did he just take like our strongest member? That's not cool. And they all turn to Mordak and say, where did they go? And Mordak reveals, oh, I suspect they're back in the time of dinosaurs. So they are. They're in the time of dinosaurs. One thing I also want to point out is that there's this, like, huge guy with, like, robot parts. Never gets named. Has multiple speaking panels in this. And I swear to God, I've never seen him before. He's not Lobo. Lobo's also just missing. So I don't know who he is, but just know he's around, and he's on the cover for the next issue, so maybe he'll play a part. I mean, it's whatever. The thing about this series, as it's been going, is that every issue feels like it's either padding and exposition, or it's the finale. Like, we got that whole thing with, like, oh, building up to Lobo, but every single issue felt like it was just kind of like padding our way to get there, and then we had the fight, and that was it. This just feels more padding. This feels like, oh, eventually we're going to have something big, and I get it. It sells comics if you think that the next big fight is always right around the corner, but, like, it's not. It hasn't been, and I don't think we're going to get the next big fight until issue 29, because issue 30 is the final one. So all in all, it's an okay issue. It's not anything great. I'm kind of just winding down on this series. I was really big on it at the start, but ever since Jim Starlin took over, it hasn't been bad. It's just been different in a way that I personally don't like. So I'm going to give this one a 6.5 and call it a day. The Movement number 8, written by Gail Simone, art by Freddie Williams II. So last issue, we had the Graveyard faction was attacking the Movement's base, and then the bad cop Wit was about to get in a punching match with a good cop Yi, because he wanted to lead like a little party of rogue cops to go get the Movement. Anyway, we open up in the police department where the good cop is basically saying like, stand down, man, I don't want to do this, I own the captain, be a good cop. And Wit's just like, dude, look at what they did to me. They messed up my beautiful face, and now we're going to exact our revenge. And I can tell you've never fought a day in your life. Meanwhile, I'm a professional. Like, I know how to box. So he lands a solid punch in Yi's face. And then we cut back to the sweatshop, which I didn't realize they called it that until this issue, but it is the headquarters of the movement. Vengeance Moth is down for the count, but she is trying to climb back up into her wheelchair. And her internal monologue's just like, okay, so these people showed up, Graveyard Faction. They're going to kill all of us. They don't want us just gone. They don't want us to disappear. They, want us to be destroyed. And currently the only thing standing between them and the rest of the people down here is Burden, who is in his full demon form and is attacking them. So we see the one named Arson tries blowing fire at him, and Burden's just like, I'm sorry, did you think fire was going to work against the demon? You're an idiot. So he throws him against the wall. And then we got the big buff one named Palace, who apparently believes that he is a god, and he immediately gets stomped by Burden. But then we meet the one named Monster Baby, who manages to do some damage. He's actually managing to hit against, and as they are all rushing Burden, he does start, taking a few hits from here, and Vengeance Moth sees that and just like, okay. So all of them in the face of Burden have completely forgotten I'm here, and that's good, because that's exactly what we need. So then we get Virtue is on the phone with Rainmaker, if you remember her from 4 issues ago. They apparently were supposed to have a date tonight, and Rainmaker is waiting at the restaurant, and she's like, oh, I got all dressed up for this. I'm what's going on? And she's like, sorry, really got to cancel. Our boy Mouse, he got attacked. We just got to be here in the hospital for him. So, yeah, I'm sorry. We'll reschedule. Rain check, but tis. So the rest of the group is still attacking Burden. Vengeance Moth comes to the conclusion that they're all taking orders from the one named Anguish, who's got barbed wire whips. And she's like, hey, Anguish, before I was in this wheelchair, I used to use crutches. And she pulls out a crutch and then just whacks Anguish across the face. So at this point, the captain of the police gets a call from one of the other good cops who sees the fight that's about to break out between Yi and the rest. And he's basically like, hey, who's the one leading it? It's like, oh, it's Wit. He's, awful. So at that point, Wit has to get held back by some of his fellow rogue cops who are just like, hey, he's had enough. Just let's go do our thing. And a couple of the other good cops get in the way and just like, no, we're going to stop you, including Wit's former partner. And he's like, well, buddy, Joe. No, that's not his name. Pena. I don't know what his last name is. He's all hurt that he's being stood up to. And he's like, yeah, I asked for a new partner just earlier this morning. We're done, Wit. So the fight with Burden still going on. Anguish is going after Vengeance Moth. And it's like, you know what? I don't care about the optics of beating up a girl in a wheelchair. You pissed me off. So she grabs the crutch and is about to attack her with it, but then Vengeance Moth is like, wait a minute. While you all were so distracted with Burden, I broke your jammer. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember what they were jamming. I think it might be radio signals out, but I couldn't tell you. So at that point, the entire cave starts shaking, the underground area, because they keep on attacking Burden too hard. So, the whole place is about to cave in. Anguish is like, all right, screw this. We're 100 feet underground. Let's get out of here. And they start trying to run their way out. We see the cave starts coming down, and apparently Vengeance Moth has some real phobia of being buried alive. So now that the jammer is unblocked, she makes a call over to Virtue, who we then cut over to the hospital. Mouse is waking up, and he whispers into Tremor's ear, pretending he's all weak, and confesses his love and then kisses her. And she's like, Jesus Christ, dude, no, we're not doing that. And he's like, but we kissed, therefore we're in love now. And then Virtue busts in the room and says, hey, we got problems at base. Let's go. So everyone on the Graveyard Faction is trying to escape. Arson's trapped under a rock. His leg is, at least. So they're trying to pull the rock off of him. Anguish is taking the opportunity to go back to Vengeance Moth and says, I want to take a souvenir. Send them a message. I'm thinking her scalp. And it's at that point that the rest of the movement shows up and starts attacking. So Catharsis body slams her, and then everyone else starts jumping in. They go over to Burden, who has been depowered at this point, and like, hey, dude, can you keep fighting? And he's like, hell yeah, I can. And he turns back into his demon form. Tremor is trying to make sure the cave doesn't fall down all around them by talking to the wall. like literally. And then the fear that Vengeance Moth was feeling, Virtue takes it because that's her thing. She can take other people's emotions, and she uses it on Anguish. And Anguish immediately starts freaking out, like, oh God, no, make it stop, get me out of here. And all the rest of the Graveyard Faction's like, what did you do to her? And it's like, oh, well, I took the fear that my friend was feeling and pumped it up by 1,000 and then fed it all into your friend. She's gonna, like, have a heart attack if I let her. So here's the deal. If you kill me, she'll be stuck in this state forever. You guys, leave now. Don't ever come back, or I swear to God, I will bury you so deep that you think hell is a mile above you. And all the other rest of the movement's like, she's a little bit scary. This is scary. So at that point, the captain finally makes his way back into the police precinct. He sees that there was obviously about to be a fight going on, and he was told that they were about to lead essentially an insurrection against the police force. And so the captain says, that's it, you're fired. And he's like, no, I'm not. You can't prove that I was going to do that. I was just talking about doing that. And the one good cop is like, he's right. He totally can't be caught on that. It's a technicality. But we did catch him on the one lone remaining surveillance camera punching a fellow officer in the face. And that's definitely grounds for suspension. So he gets kicked off the force. And the captain turns to you and says, like, hey, I bet you're feeling like a hero. And he's like, no, I'm not feeling like that. And he's like, well, you should. So go to the hospital and get yourself fixed up. So before he leaves, he just says, hey, by the way, we looked into that girl, Virtue. Turns out she's been dead for 6 years. Whatever identity she's using, it belongs to a dead girl for 6 years. So something's going on with that. Anyway, we pick up, I guess, at sunset. We see the entire movement is sitting on top of a building looking at it and just like, hey, so we just fought a bunch of supervillains. Are we superheroes now? And Virtue's like, I mean, we're still activists first and foremost, but I mean, we could be superheroes in our downtime. I don't think there's a conflict of interest there. And Mouse makes a joke about how she's going to marry Tremor and blah, blah, blah. So at that point, we get one last glimpse of Batgirl, who swings into Coral City and has a very determined look on her face because, I don't know, she heard about something, I'm sure, and she's also being written by Gail Simone, so she can make it fit in. Anyway, it's good. It's fine. I don't know. I don't really expect anything from this book, I guess is the long and short of it. Like, whatever they're doing, I'm just like, okay, I'm here for the ride. It's entertaining. It's not like some deep drama. I'm not getting some deeper thing out of it. Honestly, it feels like a superhero soap opera, more or less. It's got these big hammy things about like, oh, good cops and bad cops and all this other stuff. It doesn't feel like it's taking itself too seriously, so I'm not treating it too seriously. Overall, I'd say this one's probably I'll give it a 6. No, I'll give it a 6.5. It's okay. That's the thing. I don't want to say that it's a bad comic, but like it's definitely up for your choice as to whether or not it's something that works for you. For me, it's okay. Swamp Thing number 27, written by Charles Soule, art by Jesus Saiz. So last issue was Jason Woodrue trying to prove himself as the new Avatar and going a little bit murder happy. He proves to himself, or he proves to the Green, I should say, the Parliament, that he's not exactly capable of going up against other avatars, but he kills a bunch of like logging people and their rivers run red with their blood. So we open up this issue with Swamp Thing talking to the wolf in the Green, and he's basically like, dude, he's killing a bunch of people up there. That's on me. The whole reason he's Avatar is because I didn't take that final action I needed to and like kill him. And you got to help me like get up there. And Wolf is basically like, dude, what do you want? Like, this place is a paradise. There's no way for you to get back. There's nothing we can do about that. Whatever the Avatar does, that's not on you anymore. Like, just put it away. You are now part of the Green. And he's just like, no, I have to get out of here. That is absolutely something that needs to happen. And he's just like, okay, let's just try to view the positives here. And the wolf leads him over to a fountain and says, like, even if you could go back, he's the Avatar now. He has full power of the Green. If you went back, you would just be like a tree. That's all you would be. You would not have any access to the rest of the Green. So, like, And also, it's impossible to go back. So either way, no. So just let's take a look at the things you can do here in the green. And he walks over to a fountain and he springs up a green version of Abby Arcane that talks to him. And he's just like, what? Huh? You can make Abby? And he's like, yeah. Or we introduced another female lead recently. Maybe you'd have more fun with her. And he springs up a green version of Capucine as well. And Swamp Thing's like, okay, don't just make a bunch of women to try to, like, keep me here. That's gross. You're gross, man. And he's like, all right, fine. Let me give you something that you might actually enjoy if you're so worried about this. And he makes an apple and he says, I've imbued it with, like, sedative properties. You eat this, you'll go to sleep, you'll dream of all the happy, fun things that you could have done. And when you wake up, Jason Woodrue will have been Avatar, like, decades, hundreds of years ago. It's not something you need to worry about. You are now in the eternalness of the green. So maybe that's better. And Swamp Thing just crushes the apple and says, nope, please, I gotta get out of here. And Wolf's like, I don't know. Seriously, you think that I'm like this all-knowing guy here. There is no way, as far as I know, to get out of here because that's not something I want to do. However, there is somebody, one other person, who does want to leave the green probably as much as you do. And it's someone we've already met. And we go over to, what's her name? The woman with the Lady Weeds. That's it. The one who trained Swamp Thing in how to be more than just his body. And he's just like, hey, I saw your fight against Woodrue. You just couldn't pull that trigger, could you? Though I am happy you learned my lessons. And he's like, yeah, totally. Maybe you could teach me one more thing. And she's like, do you have any more animals from the red for me to use? Because I've kind of killed all the ones around here. He's like, no. She's like, well, then I'm not going to teach you anything. And he's like, all right, fine. Well, maybe you could just give me some information then. And he says, how do I get out of the green? And she says, kill yourself. And he's like, okay, haha, funny, but I need to get back to Earth, kind of get out of the green. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I have had some ideas about that, but there is a chance, if we go through this plan, you will risk permanent death. Not like, oh, you wake back up in the green thing. Like, no, you dead, you gone. And he's just like, I'm in. Tell me what it is. Tell me what's up. And she says, all right, we know there is a place in the green that touches the Earth. All we got to do is go there. And so they teleport over to where the Parliament of Trees is. And we see from the green side, it's just a bunch of old avatars, like psychically linked up into the real world. And just like, oh, hey, I never even considered it, them being down here. And so Swamp Thing's like, all right, so what, I need to be elected into the Parliament of Trees? That's it? And she's just like, no. They hold elections like once every like couple thousand years. Like they like their power and they're going to keep it. So no, they're not going to get you elected, especially because everyone knows that you're a weakling who couldn't kill Jason Woodrue. So no, we're going to take a much more direct option. And she sprouts some swords from her hands, cuts the psychic links of all of the avatars to the real world and says, all right, so here's the plan. They're about to wake up, and I've sealed off the grove. I've sealed off all this area from the rest of the green. So we just have to fight our way through and kill them, and they won't be able to regenerate because they don't have access to the green anymore. And then we can go through and take their place in the portal. Because I also want out because I'm just bored here. This place sucks. I want to go back up there. So at that point, Swamp Thing's like, I'm sorry, and you didn't decide to tell me the plan before you cut their things? Because now we're like, I'm just running into this whether I want it or not. So at that point, the other avatars wake up. One of them is a dinosaur, by the way. Just want to make that clear. And the fight starts. And like she said, the powers are just how much strength they have on their own and whatever weapons they brought in with them. So a bunch of fists, though some of them do have swords. And of course, there's a dinosaur. So the fight goes on. Swamp Thing punches a few of them through the head. One of them slices Lady Weeds in half, but she's still alive, quote unquote. So that one comes over after Alec. He tries to use a sword on him and says like, oh, you're just a weakling. I know you're a weakling. And then Swamp Thing guts him through the chest with his own sword and says, no, I decide what I am. So he starts sprouting a tree up into the portal to the real world. And Lady Weeds is like, wait, what about me? And she's like, yeah, I'm going to seal off the portal behind me because you're too much of a wild card to be up there on your own, Lady Weeds. I'm sorry. I just can't. And so she starts freaking out at him. And Alec comes out in the grove where the Parliament of Trees is. All of the other trees are brown and wilted because, of course, they are. And as he comes out, he's like, yes, it worked. I'm here. But oh wait, I'm just a tree. I'm not an avatar of the green. I don't have my powers or anything. I'm literally just a tree. And I can feel Lady Weeds on the other side trying to pull me back. So I need to get the power back now. So he calls out to Jason Woodrue, who is sitting on a throne of slain animals. And he's like, Woodrue, the Parliament needs your help. Get over here now. And so Woodrue flies over and he's like, oh, geez, what happened? And he's like, oh, it was Alec Holland. He killed the entire Parliament. I'm the only one that's left. And Woodrue's like, but wait, I killed Alec. He's in the green. He's dead. He's with you. And then all of a sudden it clicks and he's like, oh, wait, you're Alec. And he's like, yeah, I am. So Swamp Thing reaches out. He stabs Woodrue through the chest and then all of a sudden remembers oh crap, wait, he's a human. He's got a human body. It's just got a leafy exterior, but under it all, I just severed his spine. Okay, I can fix that later. No, I gotta make this work. So he gets the power temporarily back from Woodrue. We cut over to a boy just walking along the ocean with his dog, and all of a sudden the oceans turn green. And Swamp Thing's narration is, okay, I have caused all of the algae on Earth to go into super bloom. It inhales great, huge amounts of carbon dioxide, putting huge amounts of oxygen into the air. It makes all of the red and human life just go dizzy. I've upset the balance. I put the green in top form, and I could easily wipe out the red right now if I wanted to. Make me your avatar again. I want it. I'm willing to fight for it. Give it to me. And the Parliament that's left is like, okay, yeah, you're doing pretty cool. So they give Swamp Thing back, Alec Holland back the abilities of Swamp Thing. Jason Woodrue is drained of his power, and he's dying. So Swamp Thing's like, look, I'm sorry, this had to happen. I'm giving you what you want, though. I'm going to send you into an afterlife of the green. You'll be one with the green, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry this had to play out this way. So he drowns Jason until he becomes part of the green. And then we see Alec doing his final thing where he's like, now that I've been on the other side, I see fully how it works. And I can now put together that the Parliament has the power to end the Avatar, but the Avatar has the power to end the Parliament as well. So he sends down his seeds and he basically destroys the entire Parliament. And he sends them into their dormant phase, so that way they're never going to bother him again. And he wakes up and we see the leftover bodies of what once were the Parliament of Trees, and he says, now I am Avatar of the Green. And that's it. Alec Holland has taken control. I liked it. I think it was a bit fast of a wrap-up. I think that it was, it maybe could have been padded out a little bit more there, but he had a plan, he ran with it, and he just did whatever he had to do there. So I enjoyed it. I think it was a solid arc overall. I'd say it's probably I'd give this one an 8. I think it's a very well done issue. Like I said, maybe just a bit too rushed at times, but overall, super solid throughout. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this January 8th, 2014. And I went ahead and checked next week's comics. No more anniversary issues. So I'm good to go on another trip during a winter storm. I won't, but I could. Anyway, like I said, I think that Detective Comics may have pushed this over the 2.5 hour mark. I might be able to edit that down, but we'll see where we're at. Either way, gonna go ahead and wrap this one up quick. Next week, we got a bunch of comics. Not as many as this week, though. We only have Batgirl, Nightwing, Superboy, Superman/Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Corps, Justice League 3000, Justice League of America, World's Finest, Suicide Squad, Constantine, and Forever Evil Rogues Rebellion. The Forever Evil tie-ins are, of course, the Rogues Rebellion and Suicide Squad, and then Forever Evil Blight is showing up in Constantine. And also Justice League of America is in Forever Evil. That's a lot of Forever Evil. I think next week is going to be Forever Evil themed. Anyway, all that being said, if you have any comments on the books that are coming out next week, last week, this week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up in the comments below, or we have a myriad of social media options, most of which aren't crap. We have a Discord, we have a Reddit, we have a Patreon, so go ahead and check those out. Links are in the description or on the screen for the video version, but that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.